Hello and welcome to episode 67 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Mark Grabich and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. G'day to you, Bill.
Hey, great to be with you again.
And good to be with you too. And today we're discussing, there's a man in the UK who is apparently a vicar but who has dumped his wife and 3 kids in order to be true to himself and has decided to pursue what's called a non-binary lifestyle. Can you elaborate on this situation?
Yes, it's made a number of the media reports past week or so. The guy's name is Bingo, which might tell you perhaps what you need to know about him. But yeah, 36-year-old guy managed to get himself into the priesthood in the Anglican Church. He's trying to undo who he is, how he was created, because for 30 years at least, he managed to get himself married, had 3 children. You got to be kind of a male and have male bits and male reality to get married to a woman and have 3 children. It doesn't work in any other way. It can't work in any other way. But all of a sudden, what do we call it, a midlife crisis? He decided, I'm not a guy anymore. I think I want to be a girl. And, of course, some in the Anglican Church have happily gone along with this. And so now he's proudly pushing his trans experience, insisting that people call him they, them, which I won't. By the way, you think of something Jesus talked about when he was dealing with one bit of exorcism. And, what's your name? We're Legion because we are many. So you could almost tie in some spiritual truths here with this kind of pronoun nonsense. But yeah, it's got a lot of people talking. Obviously, his wife and 3 children are talking. They're the ones who are the big losers, as is always the case. When for 30 years you're a normal guy, then all of a sudden you realize, or think you realize, that you don't want to be a guy anymore. That leaves your partner, your children, in a very bad place indeed. So, I wrote an article on it, and as you would do, as a Christian, you can pray for a guy like this. You can ask that God will help get rid of the delusion and the illusions that he's going through, but we cannot in any way affirm or celebrate this kind of madness that he's now running with.
You've used the phrase true to yourself in your description of him in the article that you wrote about this. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it says something about the value of truth in society, the way that this sort of thing is being dealt with.
Yep. Oh, look, it is funny, isn't it? I mean, when they say they have to be the real me or who I identify as, I got to be true to who I really am. Well, that word truth means something, unless you just, you want to make up words. Truth means something, and truth means that which corresponds to reality, right? If you go outside in the middle of the night, you can say it's dark because it's dark. That's the real world. Go out at noon with the sun shining, you say it's light, it's bright. Truth has to do with corresponding to the real world. When you do not correspond to the real world as you were created, by nature and nature's God, right? You still have all your male bits. Every single cell in your body is screaming out, I'm male. It's in your DNA. So to talk about being true to yourself when you're denying the very truth of who you actually are in the real world, well, this is the height of delusion. This is the height of living a lie. And living a lie is never going to help you. It's always going to cause problems. It's always going to make things worse. Only when we live in the real world as we really are we going to find any hope in making it and progressing and having a healthy and happy life.
The man says the early chapters of Genesis spoke about from maleness to femaleness, and this inspired him to take on his non-binary identity. What do you have to say about that? I mean, didn't Jesus quote from the verses that he's talking about in Matthew 19 and Mark 10? So how did he come to this conclusion?
Oh, look, it's madness. Jesus made it quite clear. The writer of Genesis made it quite clear in the opening chapters. In the beginning, God created them male and female. He said he had some epiphany, which means kind of a divine revelation. Well, I can tell you right now, it sure wasn't a revelation of God. There is a devil who does deceive people, so we can pretty much tell you where this epiphany came from. But he said, yeah, reading Genesis 1:27, I realized that this actually means going from maleness to femaleness. Oh, good grief. Where in the world do you get that? I mean, for heaven's sakes, nobody, you don't even have to be a Hebrew scholar. Nobody can get that out of the original. Every single English translation that we have is, well, they're quite accurate indeed, and they've rendered the Hebrew text exactly what it is. God created them male and female. Two different kinds of human beings, not 13 kinds, not a slippery slope, kind of one slowly leading into the other. No, two distinct classes of human beings. One, humanity, but male and female. So for him as a vicar to try to, claim some kind of theological insight here, sorry, he's just living in delusion compounded, and he gets worse every time he opens his mouth.
Someone might say of you or I that we're no experts, or you're no expert on this sexual identity thing. You're not qualified. You don't really know what you're talking about. I know what I'd say to that. What would you say to that?
Well, look, there's a couple of ways we can respond as to his twisting of Scripture and his manhandling, if I can say it that way, woman handling, their handling, mishandling of Scripture. Look, the people who put together our English translations overwhelmingly, I mean, there's sometimes an individual, but usually it's a committee of top-notch scholars who will spend decades, right? You might have 10, 20, 30 Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek experts and scholars working on the original languages to give us a good, sound, reliable English translation of the Bible. So we can certainly trust, for the most part, those experts. But as far as this whole issue, well, look, often you'll get the retort unless you've experienced it or have some, direct personal encounter with this. Who are you to say anything? Well, that's just one of the bigger cop-outs that we hear all the time, right? It justifies anything and everything. Consider the abortion debate, right? Oh, you're not a woman, you haven't had an abortion, therefore you can't speak about this. Well, wait a minute. First of all, half of all abortion victims are males, so I would think they do have something they can and should say about this, but it's like, it's madness. Nobody operates this way. I've actually never raped anybody, nor have I personally experienced a rape. Does that mean I should just zip my lip and not say a word about rape? Guess what? I can condemn rape and say it's wrong, even though I've never experienced it whatsoever. And that's true of anything. If something is wrong, it doesn't matter what kind of experience we've had or not had. It's either right or wrong intrinsically, not just based on who happens to have experienced it. And then, of course, we could tie in another whole category, those who've been there and done that, right? The whole detransitioning movement. Those who sadly went into the transitioning were sold a bill of goods, but now realize it hasn't solved any of their deep down mental, emotional, psychological problems. And now, of course, well, the physical changes are irreversible. They cannot undo what's been lopped off or messed around with in surgery. So now they live in huge regret, and they will for the rest of their life. All right, don't believe Mark. Don't believe Bill. How about listening to these guys who've detransitioned, who know now that they were lied to, they lied to themselves, and now they regret it deeply and wish they never had gone down this path?
A bit of an invisible group, aren't they? You don't really tend to hear about them in the mainstream arena.
Well, absolutely. And it's always been that way, right? Whenever you want to demonize or pretend somebody doesn't exist, you make them invisible, right? Blacks, for a long time, were invisible people. They're non-persons. We don't even consider them to be real human beings. The unborn, go back to abortion, right? Don't talk about them, treat them as invisible people. That way you can more easily dehumanize them. So it's the same with, say, ex-homosexuals. There's plenty, I know plenty, personally, of ex-homosexuals deeply in the lifestyle, now out of it, totally changed, but they're a group of invisible people. And so to hear those who've done the trans lifestyle change, either believed it was for their own best interests or were talked into it by others, and now realize it's a dead-end trip. It's caused far more harm than good, and now they're stuck picking up the bits and pieces, almost literally. So yeah, another group of invisible people. Media won't talk to them. They won't get a run on your, Melbourne Age, ABC, New York Times, but they exist. I can certainly tell you they exist.
Is it possibly true to say that the people here going along with this are just as much to blame for the sexual identity confusion going on here, like this guy in Britain?
Yeah, absolutely. They're facilitators. They're helping to make this problem worse. And by the way, recall that in more and more, it's not a 30-year-old guy with 3 kids who's going to make this change. We're talking 4, 5, 6-year-old children, right? How deeply are they thinking through the ethical, physical, medical, psychological impact of a decision like this? They don't even know yet which, if they put on red socks in the morning or blue socks in the morning. And yet now they're supposed to decide what gender they are or what sex. Obviously, it's adults who are pushing these children, whether activist teachers or really unloving and brainless parents, or the media as a whole, of course, the whole popular culture. It's all being pushed big time. So yeah, there's facilitators going on. Many might be confused, puzzled, wondering what to do. And you get these, really heartless and brainless adults saying, of course, you have to be true to yourself. Of course, we'll get you straight away onto the hormone treatment or the surgery or whatever it is, puberty blockers. We'll do the whole bit because you must know as a 4-year-old what you want and who you are. Who are we to say otherwise? So they'll nicely push and nudge and really drag these people into something they may be at least just asking questions about. And next thing you know, they're on the surgeon's table facing the knife. So this is really, you feel bad for the victims, those who've gone through it, but you really have to be angry and upset with those who push them into this horrible place.
Now, this guy's insisting that people use the pronouns they, them with him. And as you opened up, you said, well, you're not going to do that. Talk a little bit about the control of language here. Some people are saying that this sort of thing is actually harmless and what is it? It's just it's a small thing that you can do to love someone and be kind to someone. What would you say in response to that?
Yeah, well, 2 things. One, in general, of course, we know that social engineering is always preceded, right, by verbal engineering, right? If you want to change the culture, change the society, what do? You change the language. You redefine words. You make it up as you go along. That's how all dictators have always operated. First thing you attack is common language, plus history as well. You change it midstream so that you can control the narrative, you can frame the direction you're going in. So that's how it always works. Certainly the radical left, who loves remaking society in its own image. But on a personal level, we can look at the value and the place of words, right? And the obvious case here, and it's really identical, would be, say, some 14-year-old gal who's got a bad case of anorexia, right? She thinks she's woefully overweight, fat, so she's refusing to eat. She'll look in the mirror and think, how ghastly, I'm overweight, I'm a fatso. Any normal, regular person looking at this gal will say, you're frightfully skinny, and if you don't do something real soon, right, you're going to probably die of starvation or some kind of medical complication. So that's the value of words. Imagine if this gal's friends, parents, teachers said, well, you have to be true to yourself. If you think you're fat and overweight and really need to stop eating, hey, who are we to disagree? We affirm you in your decision. We care about you and your identity choices. So, yes, absolutely, you're a fat little 15-year-old, and please stop eating now. Now, you tell me how that's going to help this gal. Like I say, the death could be the result of this kind of false compassion, living in la-la land. This is not reality. This is not truth. This is delusion, right? I meet a guy walking down the street who claims to be Jesus Christ. Well, in the old days, we tend to lock him up, put him away for his own safety and for the safety of everyone else. Today, instead, we meet some guy totally deluded, whether it's about his own sex or whatever. And by the way, we've had other things, guys identifying as animals, guys, the sky's the limit. There is no end. If life is simply about whatever you happen to identify as, well, look, if I want to identify as a chocolate chip cookie, just don't eat me if you happen to like them. But it's madness. I mean, nobody thinks this way in the real world. But this is how far we've gone with the changing of language, the abuse and misuse of language. It'll hurt in general the culture we live in, but it's certainly going to hurt those individuals who are likely confused and puzzled as to, why they're going through these feelings and what they should do. So words matter, and when you mess with words, you're going to end up with real trouble.
So you've certainly had some comments in response to your original article, and I guess the question that I've got is, what could we do in response when we meet someone like this? One of your respondents had a tactic, I suppose, or a strategy with this, and how do you balance truth-telling with love?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the truth is, but truth and love go together. You cannot separate them. If you love somebody, you want to tell them the truth. If you don't care about somebody, you just tell them what they want to hear, right? But if you care about them properly, you tell them what they need to hear. If you look at your next door neighbor's house, you see it's on fire. Guess what? The most loving thing to do is to tell them the truth. Hey, mate, your house is on fire. Quick, get out, get a fire hose, do something. Love and truth always go together. But I got critics under my article and comments saying, oh, well, you haven't experienced this. Please show some compassion. Stop being so judgmental. Well, we've already talked about this. Truth is important. If you love somebody, you want to tell them the truth. And love, biblical love, real love, is always about willing the highest good of the other person. You want what's best for them, not what's worse. So telling them the truth that, hey, chopping off bits, having surgery, that is actually not going to help the issues that plague you. There's counseling available. We can pray for you. We can talk it through. We can get you help. These are really deep down emotional, mental, psychological issues that you need to work through. And hey, there's plenty of counselors and others out there happy to do that. But of course now, even here in our state of Victoria, right, you can't do that. If somebody has questions and wants help, you can get thrown in jail in Dan Andrews, Victoria for 10 years for supposedly interfering with their choices of how they identify. So it's getting real bad out there when the thing the people need the most is truth. They're being denied getting it, and those who try to tell truth can be thrown in prison. So love and truth always go together. We care about the person who's struggling in this area, right? Same with the drug addict. If you care about a drug addict, you don't want to keep feeding him drugs until the next shot kills him. You love him enough to say, mate, I care about you. I would love to see you get off of your addiction to dangerous and harmful drugs. So love and truth go together. And it's when we divorce truth from love that we end up with this sentimental, humanistic love. Oh, mate, if you identify as a female, go right ahead. That's not love. That has nothing to do with biblical love. That really means you don't actually care that much about the person. So we need to get away from the world's idea of love and getting back to biblical. views of what love is.
Some great words there, and thank you for today's episode.
Great to be with you.
There's more at the CultureWatch website. Join us again next time with another episode of CultureWatch Radio.